So I worked contracts for 4 years. And then in 2006, I was lucky enough to be hired full time. And I was hired to teach academic upgrading in our Beaverton and Uxbridge locations. And also in 2006, I finished my Master of Arts with the University of Phoenix as well. I taught upgrading at our Beaverton and Uxbridge locations for about 6 or 7 years. And also I taught upgrading very briefly at the Whitby campus when we offered it there as well. And then I had the opportunity to move back to teaching post-secondary at the Oshawa campus, so I took it. And then within a couple years of returning back to the Oshawa campus, I became the college's second ever general education coordinator. And I did that for about 5 years, and I really, really enjoyed coordinating gen ed. It was I learned a lot. It was a lot of fun, and I worked with some fantastic people. And that brings me to where I am now. I'm teaching communications at the Oshawa campus, and I alternate my two general education courses, Hockey the First Century and Creativity of Personal Understanding, between the Oshawa and Whitby campuses each semester. I'm finishing up my 16th year full-time, and when I include my contract years, is really finishing up my 20th year at the college. So it's been a lot of fun. I've worked on academic council, college council. I'm currently part of the creativity community practice. And last year, I think one of my real career highlights was organizing or helping to organize the first ever Durham College Creativity Day. So that's my journey to Durham College. Well, it's funny you mentioned the word evolve because that's exactly what's happened. My teaching style and still continues to evolve every year. But I think at the core of my teaching is just trying to create a relaxed atmosphere in the classroom. I think if people feel relaxed and comfortable, they'll be much more open to learning the content and maybe learning a little bit more about themselves. So whether I'm teaching communications, hockey, or creativity, I always start each semester by reminding my students that they'll only get out of a course what they put into it. I remind my students that they're the ones that are responsible for their own personal learning journeys, and I'm there to help them find their way to kind of become that bridge to their next opportunity or next series of opportunities. And I think it's that point when students are aware of their own role in their learning, that it's an active role and not a passive role, that they can start to become engaged in their own learning. So I think a sense of a learning community exists when the students know that they'll be treated fairly and that they'll be given every opportunity to be successful. I think community is the result of trust and respect. So I always email my students each week on Monday mornings and remind them of what's coming up and what's due. And I encourage dialogue with me either over email or Zoom, or now that we're back in the classroom, come talk to me during break or after class or something like that. Whether we're in the classroom or over Zoom, I always outline what we're going to be doing each week for each class. And I always encourage my students to seek early feedback so they can improve on their work before submitting. So I'm always asking them, email me what you've done, send me your rough copies, let me provide you some early feedback. And a lot of students do. They take advantage of that and really improve on their work. And they're quite thankful after when they see some of the improvements that they can make. So for me, when students are comfortable in the classroom and they know there's a high level of consistency with the faculty, I think then they become comfortable in the classroom, whether it's in person or virtually with their classmates. And then as a result, a sense of community is really kind of built up at that point. So prior to COVID-19, I was already teaching my courses either hybrid or fully online. So I was already comfortable making the move to remote teaching. That really wasn't too much of an issue for me at all. For me, it was a relatively easy flip to do. But if I was to pick something that kind of worked out better than I thought, it would probably be the use of Bongo or Zoom when communicating weekly with my students. I never worried about whether the students had their cameras on or off, because I just tell them I want you to be comfortable. If you're comfortable having your camera on, have your camera on. If you don't want it on, it never bothered me. And I think for the most part, like it's tough to ask a student to turn on their camera and kind of open up their home. Like we don't know what they want to share and what they don't want to share. And um, I always believe we couldn't invite ourselves into a student's home if they didn't want us there, kind of thing, right? So the cameras on or off never really bothered me, but it was always my experience that the students were just as engaged in a Zoom meeting, either by turning on their mics and participating in discussion, or a lot of them would put their thoughts in the chat for additional comments. So if there was one thing like over the teaching remote, I'd say it was Boom and Bongo that really played a significant role. And now that we're moving back into the classroom, I'll admit when I first went back, two of my four courses went back into the classroom. My two gen eds are there now, and that first week I was a little nervous. I didn't know how it was going to turn out, or I kind of went to the classroom early to kind of familiarize myself again with, oh, my HDMI goes in here, and I better control F7 so I can project onto the screen. Little things like that you kind of forget about over a couple years. And but once a little bit like riding a bike, like once I was kind of 5-10 minutes into the class starting, I'd forgotten I was nervous, and except for the mask over my face, it was just a regular class again all over. So then transitioning back from back in February up to now, really hasn't been that bad at all. It's been rather seamless, at least for me. That's been my experience. Durham College probably has one of the strongest, if not the strongest, faculty bases in the province. And I don't say that lightly. I've met a lot of people who work at a lot of the other colleges, and they're excellent at what they do. But I just think, uh, really, without any doubt, I think we're probably the strongest faculty base. The passion our faculty has for student success is second to none. And I think in part of that is because of Cafe slash CTL and the opportunities we have to continue to develop and improve on our teaching really on a weekly or monthly or yearly basis. So for me, I wouldn't say I have any like advice, as we all have our own teaching styles and we have our own reflective practices, and we all continue to kind of develop and evolve our own teaching. But having said that, I'd be happy to share something I think that's helped keep my teaching fresh. And I think it's important to do other things that are outside of the college and outside your subject expertise area, and to do these things with people who don't really know, or, and I don't say this in a disrespectful way, but don't really care that you teach at the college. And I have a reason for saying that. So for me, like I go bowling every week. I play cards and games. I play slow pitch in this summer. I bought a kayak last summer, and now I float around like a little bit of Rice Lake, just kind of going in circles. Um, I play Angry Birds. I like playing Bejeweled. I just do other things. And for me, I think that mental break and that physical exercise, whether it's for an hour or two each day, or a few hours over the weekend, or really over the summer, really does a lot to help me when it's time to go back into the classroom or engage in some meaningful professional development, or even if I'm just going into a meeting. And I think it's best when you're surrounded by people, when you're doing these other activities that are not, that aren't really familiar with what you do, or maybe they're vaguely familiar with what you do, um, but they're not really invested in what you do at the college. And I say that because if you're with those types of people, they're really not going to encourage or engage you about your type of work. So, like for me, for example, I've gone bowling and I've played slow pitch with really the same guys for 15, 20 years. And yeah, I have an idea of what they do, and they know I teach at the college, but we never talk about it. So we never really encourage it. And the reason for that is we all want to break from what we do. We need that mental break. We just want to go out and just have fun and get away from it, so to speak. And I think for all of us, when you do something like that, and when you're with people who also don't want to talk about their work, um, you really do a lot to kind of refresh what you do when you do go back to work. So Um, just doing non-work or non-college or non-subject area things really helps me feel refreshed and ready when I go back to the classroom, or like I said, when I go into a meeting, or when I set out to do some PD. So just doing other things, I find it also keeps me open to new ideas, which oddly enough sometimes helps me at the college. So that's not really, I wouldn't call that advice. I just say that's something that works for me, and if others find value in that, then I welcome a discussion as well.